Good Tuesday morning, August 17th, 2021. Episode guide. What number are we on? 281. Can you believe it? Keep going. A lot of stuff. Baseball's a numbers game. A lot of stats. I've been doing decades. Best hitter and best pitcher of each decade, 10-year period, starting with 1870. And I'm already up to 1990, 120 years, right? At the start of each episode, I like to recap what I've done. Who won each decade as far as hitting? Who was the best pitcher in each decade? So starting with 1870 to 1879, Jim O'Rourke, best hitter. Best pitcher, Al Spalding. 1880, 1889. Best hitter, Camp Hansen. Best pitcher, Tim Keefe. 1890, 1899. Best hitter, Ed Delante. Best pitcher, Kid Nichols. 1900, 1909. Best hitter, Honus Wagner. Best pitcher, Christy Mathewson. 1910, 1919. Best hitter, Ty Cobb. Best pitcher, Walter Johnson. 1920, 1929. Best hitter, Roger Hornsby. Best pitcher, Burleigh Grimes. 1930, 1939. Best hitter, Paul Wainer. Best pitcher, Lefty Grove. 1940, 1949. Best hitter, Lou Bogereau. Best pitcher, Hal Newhouser. 1950, 1959. Best hitter, Stan Musial. Best pitcher, Warren Spahn. 1960, 1969. Best hitter, Roberto Clemente. Best pitcher, Juan Marichal. 1970, 1979. Best hitter, Pete Rose. Best pitcher, Jim Palmer. 1980, 1989. Best hitter, Robin Yount. Best pitcher, Jack Morris. Now you may argue with me and say, wait a minute, what about some of these other guys during the decade? What happened was I added up their hits for the decade for the player. Some players overlapped, indicating, for example, in the 1940s you had Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams. But they both served in the military, so they missed some years, so their hits did not accumulate. Lou Bogereau played in the 40s. He played through the war years, so he accumulated more hits. So what I'm doing is the stats for each decade. So if you're saying, where's my guy in a certain decade, he may have overlapped in the decade before with a lot of hits, played through a decade, and then the next decade, he overlapped with another series of hits, but he didn't accumulate the most for a certain decade. Following me? So you had, like in the 20s, you had Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, but Gehrig played in the 30s. Ruth, he played through the whole 20s, but Roger Hornsby had more hits than Babe Ruth during that decade, so he won the decade. So where am I at right now? I'm at 1990, 1999. Who got the most hits in the decade? Remember, sometimes players get injured and they miss games. So even though they may be a better hitter, they didn't accumulate as many hits in the decade. Following me? Who won 1990 to 1999? Who had the most hits? Craig Biggio. 1,728 hits for the decade. I added it up. I looked at his stats. During those 10 years, he had the most hits. Who came in second? Tony Gwynn, 1713. So, Biggio beat Gwynn by 15 hits. But you see, Gwynn may have missed some games, but Biggio, he just played through the whole decade. 700 at bats, just about every year. So that's what happened there. What do you think of that? What do you think of that? Craig Biggio winning it. Gwynn, close second, 1,713 hits. Biggio, 641 RBI, 318 was his high. Gwynn, 688 RBI. His high was 394. Who else had a good decade? 1990s. Looks like Roberto Alomar, 1,678 hits, 732 RBI, 333 average. Ken Griffey had a good decade, 1,622 hits, 1,091 RBI. That's more than Biggio, Gwynn, and Alomar. 327 was his high. Looking down the list here, who else played well? Cal Ripken, 1,589 hits, 827 RBI, 323 was his high. Paul Molitor, 1,568 hits, 726 RBI, 341. Jeff Bagwell, 1,447 hits, 961 RBI, 368. Wade Boggs, 1,413 hits, 491 RBI, 342. Frank Thomas, 1,564 hits, 1,040 RBI, 353. Edgar Martinez, 1,492 hits, 750 RBI, 356. I'll go down the list here. Ozzie Smith, 792 hits, 243 RBI, 295. Ryan Sandberg, 991 hits, 512 RBI, 309. Ivan Rodriguez, 1,333 hits, 621 RBI, 332. Mike Piazza, 1,200 hits, 768 RBI, 362. Kirby Puckett, 1,061 hits, 579 RBI, 329. Ricky Henderson, 1,213 hits, 459 RBI, 325. Derek Jeter, 807 hits, 341 RBI, 349. George Brett, 626 hits, 284 RBI, 329. Dave Winfield, 689 hits, 395 RBI, 290. Robin Yount, 540 hits, 282 RBI, 264. Eddie Murray, 1,087 hits, 639 RBI, 330. Jim Thome, 883 hits, 579 RBI, 314. Harold Baines, 1,236 hits, 681 RBI, 313. Chipper Jones, 871 hits, 524 RBI, 319. Vladimir Guerrero, 498 hits, 281 RBI, 324. Alan Trammell, 606 hits, 199 RBI, 329. Tim Raines, 1,094 hits, 474 RBI, 321. Barry Larkin, 1,447 hits, 639 RBI, 319. Andre Dawson, 737 hits, 460 RBI, 310. And Gary Carter, 185 hits, 109 RBI, 254. Interesting decade. A lot of good players. Craig Biggio wins it, 1,728 hits, followed by a close second with Tony Gwynn, 1,713 hits. Got Frank Thomas played well, 1,564. Ripken, 1589. Paul Molitor, 1568. Roberto Alomar, 1678. Jeff Bagwell, 1447. Barry Larkin, 1447. How about that? Edgar Martinez, 1492. Nice decade. Solid hitters. Pitching. Who won the pitching? Who had the most wins? That 10-year period. Again, pitchers overlap. They may win 20 games in a certain decade, but they can't add it to the next decade. But who had the most wins? Looks like Greg Maddux wins it. 176 wins. 2,393 innings, 1,764 strikeouts. Tom Glavine, 164 wins, 2,250 innings, 1,465 strikeouts. Randy Johnson. See, he plays into the 2000s, so that's why can't combine the wins. You have to add up the wins in the decade. Randy Johnson, 150 wins, 2,060 innings. He dominated in strikeouts, 2,538. John Smoltz, 143 wins, 2,127 innings, 1,893 strikeouts. Mike Mussina, 136 wins, 1,768 innings, 1,325 strikeouts. Pedro Martinez, 107 wins, 1,356 innings, 1,534 strikeouts. Jack Morris, 71 wins, 1,028 innings, 660 strikeouts. Nolan Ryan finishing up. He played in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. 35 wins, 600 innings, 638 strikeouts. Bert Blyleven, 70s, 80s, and 90s. 16 wins, 267 innings, 139 strikeouts. Roy Halladay just starting off, 9 wins, 163 innings, 95 strikeouts. So Maddux wins it, the decade, 176 wins. Followed by Tom Glavine, they were teammates, 164 wins. And how about Randy Johnson, 150, and then John Smoltz, 143. All right, we've gotten all the way up to 1999. We've got 2000 to 2010. There are Hall of Famers. All these players that I've been covering from 1870 until now are Hall of Fame players. You may ask, what about present-day players? Don't they win the decade? They're still playing, so I'm not including them. How about steroid players? Stats are in question. They're in dispute. So I can't put them in. I'll have a recap after we do the 2000-2010. I'll recap everything, put it all together, and see the big perspective. Hall of Fame players, who won the decade, who were the best hitters, the best pitchers. Okay? I think one more to go, 2000 to 2009. I said 10, but 2000 to 2009. There's who won that decade. Then, as far as 2010 to 2021, you can't do it. Or 2010 to 2019, you can't do it. Why? Because if you finish your career, then you need 5 years eligibility to get voted into the Hall of Fame. So you can't add up all the stats from 2010 to 2019 because let's say a player retired a Hall of Fame. Let's say a player retired 2015. You have to wait till 2020 in order to be eligible to be voted into the Hall of Fame. Following me? So I can't do that decade. Maybe later I'll add it on there. Okay? All right, that takes care of this episode. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. I'm out.